Hey, good morning. This is Jared and Nate from eCarrierCheck. I'm super jacked to be here. It's been just an incredible week as we kind of wrap up our beta testing and things like that. We have an incredible guest on with Charles. We're talking mastering sales, and we're going to dominate today. I'm super jacked about it. But Nate, tell me about your week, man. Who'd you help? What'd you learn? Just give me a breakdown.
Just patience. I feel like patience is the one thing I try to, just keep in mind, and just learn to have patience with people, with technology. Struggled with some technology this morning, but yeah, we're here just to learn and grow. But it's been a great week. Honestly, my phone doesn't really stop ringing. People are constantly, especially I'm glad we're talking to Charles today, but talking about sales. They're trying to find shippers. What do I do? How do I do it? Where do I go? So really excited for today's show.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting. Our YouTube channel has really become a educational platform. We're really trying to help people and understand process, and that's why we brought the man on. Charles, welcome to the show, man. It's good to see you.
Hey guys, I'm happy to be here. Last day of the month, we're excited.
Give us a rundown, Charles. Give me your background, man. What's going on in your world? How long you been doing this? I just want to hear kind of your story.
Yeah, I've been in sales my whole life. I think I had an uncle at a family reunion one time be like, "You need to go into sales." So ever since then, that's been my path. But I've been in logistics sales probably 10, 11 years now. I have worked for the big boys. And started and actually worked for a trucking company and started their 3PL brokerage division from the ground up too. So I've kind of seen both sides of the coin and cut my teeth in both ways. So it's good to have that kind of experience.
It really is. I came from an asset-based carrier as well, and man, you just learn things that you wouldn't have learned when you were as a freight brokerage. I feel like asset-based carriers are a little more in the box. They're selling what they can do, and they're focused on what they can do. But I tell you what, something that I found, and I'd be interested to hear from you. I found more freedoms going into the logistics space, more brokerage space. I was like, whoa, I can use everybody. I can do anything.
Yeah, and I think that and you kind of, as a broker, you kind of, and I'm kind of pigeonhole some folks in on this, but as a broker, you kind of look as carriers as more like your employees instead of your partners, and when you get to be inside of it and see, the issues that they deal with directly and the insurance problems that they have too, and the issues they have with brokers or their dispatchers and stuff like that, then you kind of gain a compassion and a more of a partnership and a respect for how they, that, for what they do. And we couldn't do what we do if they didn't do as well what they do. So you get flips, right? So you get flips out of that coin. And so it makes you, it gets you more well-rounded as a logistics person, right? So.
I love that. Yeah. I love that. Because you're a director of sales, last week I had one of the better questions I've had asked to me, and he was talking about, hey, I've grown enough where I'm about to hire my first salesman. And first off, I'm super jacked. This guy's been with eCarrierCheck since we started. Just a big fan of our platform, has grown because of our platform. And he's asking me questions that I'm hoping you can answer for him today. And he says, what are the qualities I'm looking into hiring a sales guy? Do they have to be from the industry? Do they not? How should I vet these people? And I'm curious. I'd love to hear from your standpoint. You've hired a lot of sales reps in your life. Give me a rundown. What are the qualities you're looking for in people?
Yeah, if you're right by saying qualities, because if I have seen success on every level from all kinds of industries and stuff, and I wish I could, put my finger. Believe me, um, I wish I had the golden ticket, like put my finger on someone and say, this resume right here, this is going to be the successful salesperson. But you're right, we don't necessarily look for people inside the industry or outside of it. And frankly, sometimes if you're looking for people inside the industry, the biggest thing while you're interviewing and stuff is seeing, kind of why they're not in the industry or why they have left, right? Or trying to weed through and see if they have any bad habits that won't align with your own culture, whether as or whether as um, being able to shape someone's view of logistics sales in the way you want. So it's kind of 50-50. I don't have a um, like I said, golden ticket on that. But the biggest thing we look for is uh, drive, right, and passion, and the ability to handle chaos. Like if you talk to someone who needs to be super organized in what we do, they may go crazy. But if you talk to someone who is not organized at all, they also, would never cut it, right? It's you kind of have to be able to direct the chaos in one direction and stay as organized as you can in one direction, and follow up and do what you say you're going to do and that kind of stuff. So we're looking for people who can do that, right, multitask and handle that in a timely manner, and most of all, uh, get after it, right,
Yeah.
and have a passion for just hard work.
I got to tell you this, Charles, because this was kind of comical. So one of the guys, I don't know if he's on or not, but I grew up with this guy, and we were doing, this was probably 10 years ago when I was doing, we were hiring LTL sales guys, right? And I said, you know what? Let's take this guy downstairs. We'll take him in our conference room because we had a kind of a couple different layer of level. And this guy's never been in trucking at all. And I go, we're going to make a cold call right now. And I had a back in the day, this is before like technology. So I had a yellow pages. I literally had the yellow pages. I said, you're going to call one of these guys that are listed in manufacturing and you're going to make a cold call. And he goes, well, what am I going to say? So I coached him through, we had like a 2-minute coaching session. And he literally picked up the phone and made a cold call. And I mean, he's dripping sweat. It was the most hilarious interview I've ever had. The guy ended up being honestly kind of a stud at sales. But I got to say, from my standpoint, something I'm always looking for, God, I love athletes. I don't know about you. Tell me your thoughts on athletes.
So, I mean, that does, speaks to me because I was a college athlete. I played football in college, not a big school, Division II, and probably you're probably looking for more like the Division II athlete because kind of the unsung hero is still got to take all the crap, you know what I mean, but still got to push through. So you're right, because we know that there is tons and tons of work that goes into that before you get that close, before you get your first commission check on for however your commission structure. We know there's so much that goes in before it. So having someone that knows that kind of work and that kind of like just not, really right now, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. There is just, I'm planting seeds for my future and then cultivating that and getting on with that. That is, it really is what we're looking for. Not, it doesn't disqualify someone, of course, but you're exactly right. Kind of like that, and like with servers, some people
Yes.
they can take a lot of, again, a lot of crap and can guide the chaos in one direction so that someone's happy at the end of the day. That kind of mentality is really, what we look for.
Yeah, I love that. That's honestly, that's like everything right there. Jacob says Division II pride. I love that. He's like, let's go.
Yeah, that's right, baby. You never heard of me, but I still did all the practices, man. Like, right? So
That's
anyway.
so good. If anyone's watching today, thank you for being on. If you have questions for Charles, this guy is truly the man when it comes to sales and process. Ask Charles if he remembers Thad and Robert at Swan from back in the day.
So I've been at Swan for 3 years now. So I couldn't speak to 02 to 08. I believe in some of Robert. And I believe I've heard of that too from our headquarters folks, Texas folks. But I can't say that I would be able to tell you much about them. So
Yeah,
sorry.
that's yeah. No, you're good. You're good, man. So let's talk about the process of sales. It can be a little intimidating. Obviously, we're hiring the right people to be able to pick up the phone. But where does somebody start when it comes to just, they're out of the gate, they're 6 months in, you've had a lot of new guys. what seems to be the magic sauce to get people in 6 months running as a freight broker?
What do you want me to start at the 6 month mark or start at day one?
Day one's cool with me.
Yeah. Okay. So, um, really, the biggest thing, if they have not been a freight broker before, if they've not been, maybe in logistics, but not heard the objections that you're going to hear in with what we do. And again, I tell everybody in freight brokerage, anyone I've coached or consulted or anything like that, we're not selling something that someone else doesn't have, right? I'm not calling and offering a product to someone and saying, hey, our product is much better because it does this in more time, or it's more, whatever. We are literally calling and saying, hey, we're going to pick up your freight just like somebody else did today. They haven't been waiting for Charles to call every day and be like, if Charles calls one day, maybe we'll be able to move this freight. No, they're moving it, right?
Yeah.
So hearing the objections is really the first thing that I want our folks to do. We give them the training, we walk through all of that stuff, but eventually in the first few weeks, we want them to get on the phone and to start hearing what someone is going to say to them, prospects are going to say to them, because you're not going to get that scar tissue any other way. I can coach you to, we can go back scenarios and all, and back and forth all we want, but until you have that and you receive coaching on the spot, like, okay, this happened. Let's ask about that. Let's ask about what they happened, and move through the sales pipeline. So that's really where I want to start. I tell our guys, listen, the worst thing you can do right now is not do that. Just let's talk about what folks are saying to you, and develop and get that scar tissue and hear the questions we need to ask and all of that stuff. And then eventually we work on, again, that a need, we really focus on needs assessment, solutions development, right? Open-ended questions, finding out what their logistics process looks like, because every customer is different, and that's where, again, we don't have a product that's different, but we and anyone can set themselves aside, apart by partnering with the customer, figuring out what's been going wrong, where the pain points are, what kind of issues are you having with your current carrier, and then developing those solutions. And that's how you're going to get the good customers, that when it's a loose market like it is, that are going to stick with you, that are going to respect your rates instead of argue over $10, right? And I mean, truthfully, so I mean that's without giving a long diatribe of the sales process and all of that stuff. It's really what we like to do. The I would say the first thing, um, really the first advice I give these folks, besides just getting on the phone, is don't overthink it. Right? I can't tell you how many times
Yeah.
we've got folks that they just want to research every, they want to take a customer and they want to sit down and they want to break down their website for 30 minutes and like gear themselves up in the calling, and then they call the phone number on the website and it's a fax number, right? And they just spent 30 minutes like just like playing Rocky and getting ready, and then it's like or like they call up and it looks like it's cool and they do a lot of stuff, but it's actually a mom and pop farm stand, and they sell three bushels of strawberries a month, right? And you just don't know until you call and ask, and you can't partner with someone if you don't know what they're doing. A lot of times it looks like somebody's doing something on their website, and it's something completely different, or maybe something in that industry, but you don't know. Just call up and let's work it out and figure out. Anyway, so you spend you spend think about it. If we found, really, the research we found is new reps within their first 6 months, they really need to touch 60 to 100 people in a day, right? You've got to build a successful pipeline. Now, it can be, organizing a day and it's a little slow, or yeah, some people do more, but really that sweet spot's like 80 calls, you know what I mean, or 80 touch points, right? um and if I spend 10 or 15 minutes researching um a website every time I want to call somebody, that's 80 calls, that's 800 minutes. There's not enough time in the day, right?
Right.
So, and I'm gonna This is a plug for eCarrier. Here we go. I'm coming around to it. If you can find services like eCarrier, that's why we use you guys. Why first time I ever talked to you, I was like, wait, can you use this for prospecting? You know, you've got folks, you know where they're picking up and you know what they're running and all of that stuff. That's quick. That's all I need to know. That's my hot lead. I know they're moving freight and I know it's going this direction and I know it's on a flatbed. That's all I need to know. Everything else, pick up the phone and figure it out.
Yeah.
Right? Ask them about it. So that's my advice for new brokers and getting going, because a lot of them, they just cold call every day, and that's not, you never, 99.998% chance in this industry, pick up the phone and first call, you close somebody. So if you're not if you're not developing that relationship, then you're giving yourself a literal 0% chance of moving any freight.
Yeah.
Charles, that was well said. And I'm a big believer that your first call is going to be a lot different than your 100th call. And, it's just crazy like that. You just got to kind of make some scars and learn from it. So,
yeah. I love that. Don't overthink it. I think something that's really interesting that you said, you said it real lightly, but this is something that has a lot of meat to it is, you were talking to these guys day one about what are the objections they're going to hear, because you're going to hear about the same 5 objections. You know what I mean? And how do you combat that? What do you say when they say it? We don't use freight brokers, or we are full, or, adding value. Ozan said something here, Charles, and I'd love for you to break this down. What are the biggest challenges for new salespeople facing now? What changed and what make it better or worse for the last 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, well, if you go 2.5 years ago, you became so tight because everyone's moving construction stuff and adding new stuff and it's kind of sticking where they're at. The kind of prospecting you would do is, hey, I can find you a truck, and they were like, thank God we haven't been able to see a flatbed, and since Moby Dick was a minnow, right? We hadn't, so that it was a different kind of prospecting. Now it is integral to teach sales folks that just because they say, they're going to have more inherently, you're going to have more carriers calling, more carriers that you already work with begging for more freight, and you're going to have more 3PL providers calling all these companies. Now it's more important than ever to do what I was talking about, which is develop what is really going on with them, right? Because in this kind of market, and really I hate even talking about how salespeople that sell like this, but like I have trucks, like like the go-to is I have trucks in the area, right? And that kind of selling is never going to work in this kind of market, right? It is what's going, I need to specifically identify what is going on and how I can help your industry, or your company. I mean, the fact is, a long time ago, say 10 years ago, I had a customer that they dealt with. Their billing and their invoicing was, they had just done a green initiative and they didn't want any paper invoices, right? And their current carriers kept sending them invoices in the mail, and it was driving them crazy. And every time they tell them, they say, okay, we won't, but then the billing department be like, no, we always send out paper invoice. And it was driving, and that was their pain point. Like, something that I would, I'd be like, oh, usually you call them and say, well, we're on time and all that stuff. They didn't care about any of that. If you didn't ask and say, what is the real issue going on with you guys? And they're like, well, we just hate getting these daggum paper invoices, right? And so, I called up our billing department. I said, I don't care if you guys send them to my house. Don't send these people paper invoices. And that's how we were able to close it. So, Azana, going back to your thing, is I would say what has changed is really the relationship and partnership is is paramount more than ever right now. Because if you don't have a strong relationship right now and that partnership, right, it's going to be, everyone is listening to everything else, and anybody right now is going to be trying to come in and undercut everybody, right? Because the market's getting looser. So unless you have a customer that knows that you are catering to exactly what they need, right, and you are a big part of their logistics process, you're going to be thrown away and just gone for the guys who can do it for $50 less, right? I mean, we're seeing higher margins than ever, and I know that sounds crazy right now, but it's because we are partnering with our I'd say higher margins than ever, more like normal margins, right? Because um, our, our folks, our customers, we do this, and we repeat the sales cycle. We talk to them about this stuff, and that's what our reps are taught, right? So
Yeah, that's huge. You're talking about adding value to people, rather than just being a transactional. And I gotta say, Charles, that it's just, it may take a longer process to get where you're going with adding value, but boy, that relationship adds margin percentage. That relationship goes longer. Obviously, some of the guys that are just getting their teeth cut, they're in a transactional mindset. How do you train to go from that transactional mindset to really, asking the right questions? How do you train those questions?
it's tough because I tell you, inherently in all of us, we're conditioned to be like cheaper is better, right? So any kind of it really across the board in all of sales industry, but and especially in ours, they feel like, well, Charles, if I could just tell this guy this, I'd get the load. And my response is, yeah, if I could sell, $50,000 Teslas, I could sell 1,000 of them a month for 30,000, right? But that's not going to make anybody any money, and it's not going to be sustainable, and it's not going to keep the lights on, right? So it is. You're right. There is a little bit of a longer sales process, but I think when they come in, and it again, it's us, it's our branch sales leaders, our sales managers, you know, talking to these guys like, okay, that's fine, but it goes directly along with along with closing and getting a first load with somebody.
Mm.
Now you may there may be times where you actually cost money, you hit the lucky spot, and they are dying on a load, and you run it, and do whatever. But that customer is probably just as likely the next time they have a load to talk to somebody else and give to somebody else too, right? So the customers you end up with in the long term are going to be the ones you do partner with, right? And then you will be able to close those customers because it's, Mr. Customer, it's a no-brainer. We talked about this. You said you needed this,
Mm.
and you're saying you're having troubles with this, and this is how we're going to fix it. Why haven't we moved a load, right? And then, um, and that's what they're taught. And if you want to know the truth, eventually what happens is these guys, they think they need to be the cheap guy, and then they see everybody else around them um, doing it a little bit better, and they say, well, I probably need to ask for a little bit more money on these because I'm not making any money, right? And and again, that then develops their service level, right? And their questions, and they deserve it because they give great service. And customers are like, hey, that's what I pay for, right? So
Oh, with sales, obviously, picking up the phone is the number one way to go. Obviously, there's, the other form of communication with email. Where do you fall in with that strategy? Have you seen it work? And then I got a couple other follow-up questions after that. But where do you follow up? Where do you fall in line with emails?
so I don't know, and how you want me to answer this, but I'm a little bit old school. I am of the belief that of course you need emails is a great tool, right? It's another touch point. Eventually you want to get to a spot, where you and the customer, walk in the morning, they're like, hey, I need 4 more of those trucks to Indianapolis, right? That's how the tool I need. Um, but it it is much more efficient and much, I guess, easier, may not be the quite right word, but it's much more efficient to try to close someone over the phone, right?
Yeah.
Because what happens is, and what we see all day, and this is a coaching point that I sent out an email about this yesterday. That's 8 paragraphs long, so I could talk about this one all day. But that's why I was like laughing. I was like, oh man, if Chase is watching this somewhere, he's like, oh, here we go. Um, uh, that what happens is we lose that relationship if you just what I would call just a rate guide or a rate matrix. You get you just become a list of 75 other 3PLs or carriers, and you just send it. We call it quoting. We just send a quote. I hate the word, the Q word, quote, a quote back, You send a quote back because, you're trying to win a load. And then either this, what happens, either, you just become a number, right? Not a relationship, not building that foundation, none of that stuff. Or they say, okay, I've got somebody for 8. Now I'm just going to try to beat it. Right. And you just, you set the high on the market, right? With that load. Instead of calling someone and saying, hey, what you got? Is there any specific I need to know about this, this movement, right? What's going to make it the perfect movement for you? Um, when does it need to pick up? And then saying, hey, I've got someone that can do that at 9 a.m. And then if they say no, literally saying this, you're getting a little bit of my inside sales technique, but when a prospect or customer tells us no for the load, I tell our guys to say, okay, you want me to let that truck go? Right? Because you've got to if they've had a tough time covering somebody, and or where it's happened before where they have had somebody and not, they've got to look at you and say no, right? And then it gives you the opportunity. You can't do this over email. It gives you the opportunity to say, okay, listen, is there like what's going on? Is there like another truck you're looking at, or is it the rate? And they're like, yeah, someone is about $50 cheaper. And then you're like, well, listen, they couldn't call me a salesperson if I can't talk carrier down $50, right? So there's a lot of, or we'll figure out where their price point is, and we can kind of hone in where we can meet, on that load for the next time. But none of that happens if they're like, hey, Indianapolis to Nashville, and you're like, okay, $600 for flatbed, and then send it out. You'll never hear from that customer. You'll never close them, and it's honestly not the kind of customer we want because we're not partnering with them. We can't show our service, right?
Right. Yeah, you become a transaction.
Cashier, man. That's what I say. You're a cashier then.
You really are. Something that and I think that like sometimes, and I'll explain myself here. You pick up the phone, and you have a great conversation with the shipper, and he's like, you know what, send me an email. And I honestly think when they say send me an email, it's almost like cholesterol. This is another objection. You know what I mean?
So,
it's like cholesterol. It's like a hidden objection. Nobody talks about it, but it's like, oh, they just want me to send them an email, and it's like, what do you want with that?
that's the number one objection that we talk about is send me an email, because that is the one you get 95. Even if you get another one, you get, these guys are going to be looking, they're looking at me because they hear me talk about this all the time. If you hear send me, and I am the director of sales and kind of overstepping on our branch sales leader about talking about this all the time too. I just don't want, but, we, when we hear, send me an email, we should all, like a band and angels should come up, and we should say thank you for asking us that, because we coach that so much, and it's an easy objection to turn back around. And it's, you say something like, great, I'll send you an email. What would you like? What kind of information do you need for that email? Right. And then I say, well, we run 48 flatbeds, or do you guys have van, or can you tell me about your lane from this to this? Right. You just ask them, and guess what? Now we're back talking about their freight.
Yeah.
Right. And they say, oh, flatbeds. Oh, great. Flatbeds. How do you guys load those things? Right. And all of a sudden we're not talking about emails anymore. And it should be just conditioned. Right now, we do want their email address. Right. So if it does come, and we're not going to be able to do that. We do want to get that information. And I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is, if you get an objection like that, that is not something that you want to. That's, they're not breaking. They're not slamming the door. Really, they're opening it up, and so that's how we handle it.
Yeah, something I layer on top of that, Charles, because that's beautiful. You keep them on the phone. What do you want in that email? I love that question. Something that I layer on top of that, just to kind of keep top of mind, is I always say, we're from Nebraska. Obviously we don't talk about our football team, but we're from Nebraska. And, I always say, what, here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you this email about flatbeds or this lane, but I'm going to put in the subject line, Nebraska based company, you know what I mean? So that they kind of, it stays top of mind, so if you can find your key, I think it's huge. Because gosh, sometimes you go down the rabbit hole, you get set up with these shippers, and then nothing happens, and you're like, well, this was friggin' pointless, and it really just kind of pisses you off until you get to a point where you can finesse it further. When a client goes cold like that, Charles, he says, "Let's get set up." How are you ruffling the feathers? How are you getting that guy to kind of get off center or get off his old habits? Let's be honest, everything is a habit, right? So he's just emailing his other broker, he's
Right.
emailing his other carriers. How do you ruffle that feather a little bit to kind of get that off center situation going?
So our guys run into a lot. They'll call, they'll become, get on these lists or whatever, and then, and then I get after them, and they call and they'll talk to the contact and say, hey, I've got a truck. Let's talk about it. And they'll be like, I told you to send me an email, or I respond to the email. And literally, how we ruffle a feather is we ruffle that feather right there. We make it memorable that they talked to us on the phone, right? And you say, listen, that's fine, but I've got somebody on the other line. I need an answer. You know what I mean? Or whatever it is, we want to hold them accountable for talking to us, because
Hmm.
I can tell you that in that whoever that is having, if they are really truly just getting emails, they're having logistics trouble, right? Because they are not communicating well with carriers, and they are taking the cheapest person possible, right? And I can tell you their claims percentage is higher, their on time percentage is lower, than whatever their industry is. And if we can actually crack that nut and get in there a couple of times and show them what a good customer, a good 3PL, a good carrier can do, right, you'll have them forever. There's an old customer of mine, a little brokerage based out of North Carolina, that I would handle all. I mean, I just ended up becoming like their de facto other broker, right? And I remember talking. Her name was Karen. Her literal name was Karen, and true story, it was. And so I called her, and I worked on her, and the last thing I said, I was like, you know what, this is it. They're just not going to be afraid. And I was like, Karen, you know what? One day you're going to like me, and I don't care what you say. You're going to like me. And then she just started laughing, like, "Pfft." And then she became like my best friend. Sometimes the people who don't know, they hate your guts or whatever they're calling and all that stuff. If you can crack that nut and really show them, you know, what's going on, like this is, we need to partner together. You've got a customer for life, and that they're not going to trust anybody else anymore, right? So that's
Yeah.
the kind of what we're looking for. But it doesn't work if, the first time you hear no, you get shut down, and it's a qualified, prospect, and you don't pick up the phone and talk to them again. If you just become the rate guy, the email guy, or the, not follow up, not, calling them, talking to them about the freight and their process, it's not going to happen.
Oh man, I love that. There's so much. I love the meat on there. Obviously, we've got some people on today. If any questions for Charles, please drop them in the comments. We'd love to keep him going. Charles, I'm kind of curious from a management standpoint. There's multiple ways to run a brokerage. There's the cradle to grave. There's sales and ops. What seems to be, you've seen from the bigger boys to where you're at right now, which is kind of a higher level, brokerage. What seems to be the best sauce for the shake there?
My personal, and this is how I've structured things here, is kind of a hybrid form of cradle to grave and operations, having carrier folks. We don't, like you got, the big boys, let's call it, TQLs and the CH, they bring folks on and they train them on accounts for, 5, 6, 7 months or whatever they do now. And they lose a lot of good salespeople along the way because they they don't let their horses run. And then the flip side of that is, they don't get developed in anything else. It's just, it just. But also, if you don't get brokers help, they burn out, right?
Yeah.
There's only and they plateau. And like I said, you want your horses to run. You want your best salespeople to be able to sell, right? You want your hunters to hunt. Is kind of how what we say. So I've found we bring folks in, and then we as they grow, we put we build a team around them, right? And we give them, what we call carrier managers or customer account specialists too, whatever they're needing on their account to kind of take, that away from them, and let them continue to grow accounts and, grow their actual customers and be able to prospect more. And they partner with those folks, like they're account managers, and then they become senior account managers for those teams, so they are the managers of those teams, so they get responsibility for these folks as they're brought on. But it's not like one day these folks are now going to leave. They are assigned to that account and help them grow. And we've really found that that's the best way. And frankly, we we call them a sales team because we hold them accountable to helping grow accounts too, whether that be, providing great service. But also, we're doing all these trainings right now in our organization about keeping your head on a swivel, is what I say. Our support folks, carrier account, can, talking to the carriers, you know, um, talking to shippers and receivers, because those are the folks on big accounts that do it, not the sales guys. Sales guys most talk to customers and meeting with new prospects, right? And talking to them about, who'd you deliver to last, what, for the, shippers and receivers, is who else is, could this benefit from? Are you guys delivering anywhere where there's trouble? Right? Keeping their head on swivel, because the more freight you do, more freight you rub up against, right? And so when you're rubbing up against more freight, that's opportunity to grow your account. So what we see is when we get people extra help covering freight, doing, great service folks, people who really support account and help grow these accounts, they start to skip with their opportunity to grow their customer accounts, right? Because their bandwidth is increased tenfold.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I think, is there a revenue level that you hit in order to make that decision where you just go, boom, where do I turn?
We so it's there is a general, level we have to look at, but it is coupled with a load level, because so, as you know, some, like, for instance, um if you're moving, huge concrete pipes that are 150,000 pounds and 18 feet wide, and you've got, and these loads cost $40,000 to move, however far, um, then inherently you're going to bring in more revenue on that load because it's a much higher load. So even if whatever margin you're making is just going to be more, right? So if you're moving 4 of those loads a month, um, you probably don't need as much help as, on the flip side, someone who moves, you know, uh, van runs, 100 miles, but they do, you know, 250 of them a month, right?
Mm,
They probably need more help coordinating that, um, than the 3 or 4 oversized. So you have to take that, not so it's just not just revenue. It's more, it's more, loads. But we have marks where we do that, and it makes sense, and it doesn't allow because the biggest thing we want, is for our folks to feel like they're supported, that they can keep growing and be as successful as they want to be, and have the work-life balance that you don't see a lot in our industry. Um, Through that support, it is a big deal sometimes that they get burnout and they're the only ones answering the phone and all of that stuff, because freight doesn't wait. Freight don't wait, right? And it's always moving. Um, so it's a big deal for us for them to have that support, right?
absolutely. Ozan here mentions, he says he's a freight agent. Doesn't look like he's with a brokerage yet. Um, he's trained and ready to dive into the industry. Where does somebody like that start? Is he just going to the big boys as an agent and signing up with them? Is he going to a mid-level brokerage? What's a good advice for Ozan to kind of start to grow his network?
I mean, you're right, Ozan. It's a great question because a lot of brokerages, a lot of 3PLs or the bigger ones, the knee-jerk reaction to a lot of agents is, watch out, because of all the MC stuff that's going on right now and all the double brokering. And I know, and Ozan, you even listening to that, I know that's not, I'm not, you know, identifying you as that. But what I'm saying is, a lot of times, you're dealing with someone that may be even in, a different country that you try to talk to about what's going on, and they don't answer the email until 2 a.m. You know what I mean? I would say we have a few agents that we really trust and we work with a lot, that can handle a lot, because a lot of times they are even more, suited for some stuff. The one I'm thinking of right now, it has a lot of oversized experience, and I met him at a conference, right? And I met him face to face, and what I can tell you, that meeting him face to face makes me feel like I trust the guy a whole lot more, because he really, I've sat down, I've had a drink with the guy. It's not some guy that I will never meet, and I guess that's how I'd recommend it. I would say, go to a few brokerages, and start with folks like us who aren't necessarily like a little guy. But if you're trying to break into CH Robinson, I'm sure there's few more loops you have to go through before, you move freight for CH, right? But with us, we're going to check your MC and all of that, but we're a little bit more, mobile in that aspect, like, and we're going to make sure everything's on the up and up, and you meet our standards. But, other than that, it's about the relationship and, you providing, what we need.
I love it. I love it. Charles, you have gone hard today, man. Like, it's so much value today, so much meat on the bone after this show. And I love everything that you brought today. I mean, it's truly incredible. Thank you for being on.
Yes.
You really have you can tell you've got a different level of experience. You're at the upper echelon there.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Charles, any closing thoughts? Any other thoughts for the show?
No, I mean, it's my email address is charles@swantrans. If anybody wants to read, I'd love to network with anybody who's on. But really, I would say what we do. I couldn't imagine. I've been in all kinds of other levels of sales, and I couldn't imagine not doing what we do, because it is always something. It's like air traffic control meets Wolf of Wall Street. You know what I mean? Like, it's like we've always got stuff going on, and the sales floor is always, kind of happening. So I respect everybody in this industry, from the carriers and what they're trying to do. Even the TMS salespeople that reach out to me 45 times a day. I love those guys too. I get it. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like a brotherhood. So yeah, I think it's great. And for new folks getting started, it's a $1 trillion industry. So everybody get their piece, man. Because that's what we do. And if you're not getting your piece, because you're not a good enough salesman. You know what I mean?
That's so good. We had a couple last second questions pop in here, Charles. One was confirming your actual email. Is that swantransport.com, or is it just
yeah, it's just swantrans.com.
Trans.
Yeah.
Trans. Okay.
Charles@swantrans.com.
Mike asked a real quick question. Well, we can keep this at a 30,000-foot level. Would you recommend prospecting directly at truck stops to get leads?
I would not. I would answer that quickly. I would not, because if you're standing at a truck stop and you talk to 10 drivers and they give you, I don't know, let's say 3 leads apiece, that's 30 leads you did. And the whole day you spent around driving and going all that stuff, before you got out to the truck stop, I could have called 30 leads.
Exactly. I love it. Charles, thank you for being on today.
Yeah, thank you, Charles.
Nate, how do people get in touch with eCarrierCheck? We're obviously a sourcing platform to help find shippers, carriers, brokers.
Yep.
We have some cool phone technology, but give us a rundown. How do people get in touch with us so we can try to help them grow?
Yeah, most definitely. So just go to eCarrierCheck.com. You'll find our phone number, email there. We're pretty awesome over here, so we love to hear your story, try to get you where you need to be or want to be. And obviously, we got really cool connections like Charles. If we ever need any feedback or advice, we got him.
Yeah.
But yeah, reach out to us. Let's see how we can grow your business and get you going.
I love it. Everyone have an awesome Friday.
Thanks
for
again,
being
Charles.
on.